for joining us tonight on another episode of The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and I'm so glad you've decided to tune in for another fabulous little half hour where we are going to talk all things motorsports, because let me tell you something, we had a lot going on over the past weekend. We had a couple of NASCAR races up in the great state of New Hampshire. We had the Formula One Azerbaijan Grand Prix, which had a record number of red flags during its qualifying session. Lots to talk about coming out of that. Then we also had the IMSA battle on the bricks this past weekend, possibly one of the final times that, at least for the foreseeable future, that IMSA will be racing an endurance race on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. But otherwise, lots of stuff going on around the world of motorsports, lots of news from every facet of it, and we've got to get you all caught up on all of that, and we'll be doing that here coming up here later on in the show. But before we go ahead and get into that, be sure, if you like this show, to remember, follow me on social media. You can do so by looking up at rpeeters33. That's RPEETERS 33. And then make sure you've got that little WTHR Plus app installed on your smart TV so that you can get brand new episodes of The Racing Report each and every week they're released. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the news. Boy, let's go ahead and get right on into it. In Formula One, as we always do, we start with Formula One. F1 and the Azerbaijan Grand Prix have announced a new 4-year deal that will keep the race on the calendar through at least the 2030 season. So we will be going back to the Baku City street circuit at least for the next 5 years. So some good news depending on how you feel about Baku and Azerbaijan. If you don't like the race, I'm sorry. It's apparently here to stay for at least another 5 years. But if you like the chaos and just complete madness that sometimes comes with Baku, we do know that we'll be getting that at least for another 4 races. Meanwhile, it's been named official. Christian Horner has reached a settlement with Red Bull and has now officially left the team after accepting his severance package. So that's it. That's done. It's over. That era is officially in the past. So not a lot of Formula One news to talk about this week, but definitely some big pieces of news, especially after everything that's going on in terms of the championship. Max Verstappen getting another win there, but maybe McLaren is starting to sweat. We'll talk about that later on in the show. Don't miss it at all. Believe me, it is coming up later on in the show. Don't go anywhere and miss it. But now we've got to talk about some of the IndyCar news that's going on here in the world. First and foremost, this broke right after last week's show posted. Of course it did, right? Can't wait any time for news to drop conveniently for our recording schedule. But either way, Team Penske has confirmed that David Malukas will take over the number 12 Verizon sponsored Chevrolet in the IndyCar series beginning next year. So we do know that was kind of the big rumor that Malukas was going to slide into the 12 and replace Will Power. And yes, we now know that is the case. Apparently it's a multi-year deal, something that they were not willing to give Will Power. Very interesting. But we'll see how David Malukas slides into those big shoes that he's got to fill at Team Penske in the Verizon number 12 car. Because believe me, Will Power's been driving that car literally since it started in 2009. That car was made for Will Power, and it continued. It ran full-time in 2010, and up until this past year, this most recent race at Nashville, it was piloted by Will Power, and beginning this upcoming March in St. Petersburg, it'll be piloted by David Malukas for the first time ever. So some big news there. I'm curious to see what you feel about that. I know it's about a full week late, but still, if you want to go ahead and tweet me, you could do so by looking up at rpeeters33. That's RPEETERS 33. Go ahead and let me know what you think. I want to know what you think, if you think that Malukas has got this in the bag, or if it's going to be a decision Roger Penske regrets. I just want to know. Meanwhile, more silly season news. The dominoes are falling. We already knew that this would happen as soon as the end of the Nashville Super Speedway race weekend happened. We do know that now Dale Coyne says it has signed Indy Next champion Dennis Hauger to drive for their team next season, and they will have a technical partnership with Andretti Global as they sign Dennis Hauger for next year. So good news, the Indy Next champion is finding a place to land. And I think that's a really good spot. Dale Coyne, let me tell you something. Obviously, Dale Coyne, halfway through last year, towards the end point of last year, last couple of seasons, they did sign Michael Cannon, who, remember, left Prema And after having been at AJ Foyt Racing and before that, Chip Ganassi Racing, Michael Cannon is a genius when it comes to getting these Indy cars fast and going fast and trimmed out for speed, especially at a place like Indianapolis, especially at some of those ovals. I think that's going to be a really, really good landing spot for Dennis Hauger. I think he's going to have a really good opportunity to learn. And I know a lot of people might look at Dale Coyne and say, well, it's Dale Coyne. You know, he does what he can do with a very limited budget. But I still think who he's brought in, the personnel that he's got in. Now we're talking about a technical partnership with Andretti Global. I think that could really help. And we don't even know who their second driver is going to be. We do know that Dennis Hauger obviously is going to take one of the two spots in Dale Coyne Racing's squad for next year, but we don't know who's going to take the other. And I'll be very curious to see who that person might be. Might be Roman Grosjean, but we'll see. I don't know. All I'm saying is you might want to keep an eye on Dale Coyne, those Dale Coyne cars for next season, because they could be pretty stout. Meanwhile, some other news. This is Indy 500 only news, obviously, but Jack Harvey is going to return to Dreyer & Reinbold Racing next season for the Indianapolis 500. He's going to contest the 110th Indianapolis 500 with Dreyer & Reinbold Racing with the same sponsorship. I think it's Invest that sponsored him last year, so no real change there, but good to see that Jack Hollywood Harvey, as they call him on the Fox broadcast, is getting another opportunity to run the Indy 500, and I'm glad to see that Dreyer & Reinbold Racing still hanging out. I know there's been some rumors about them potentially wanting to come back and become a full-time team again, but I think for right now they're sticking to their Indy 500 only aspirations, which so far so good. You know, if you can lock down Harvey to at the very least be one of your cars, I think that's a good deal. Final piece of IndyCar news here before we take our first break of the show. Andretti Global has announced that ex-Team Penske managing director Ron Rosiski will become the team principal for both of its IndyCar and its Indy Next programs. So, big news there. Now the only question is, where's Tim Cindric going to go? He's the last guy from that was dismissed in May earlier this year from the Team Penske scandal fallout that has not yet found a home with another IndyCar team. But we do know at the very least that Ron Rosiski is going to be with Andretti Global beginning next year. So some good news there. But that is it for the first half of the news. We've got to split the news in half, take our first little break. And then when we come back, we've got lots more coming up. Formula E, Supercars, NASCAR. You won't going to miss any of it. So do not go anywhere because you are watching The Racing Report. And welcome back to The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. Thanks so much for sticking with us through that break. Let's go ahead and get you caught up on some of the Formula E silly season news that's going on. Formula E, obviously, still got a couple of more months before they kick off their season again coming up here in December. But we do know that former series champion Antonio Felix da Costa has parted ways with the Tag Heuer Porsche squad. He is expected to move to Jaguar to replace Nick Cassidy, who we talked about last week, is joining the brand new Citroën team, which is taking over from the Stellantis-based, obviously, the Maserati team. It's the same team, it's just a different name. But we know that Nick Cassidy's moving over there, so it's expected that Antonio Felix da Costa will move to Jaguar and replace him there. Meanwhile, the Lola Yamaha team says they're sticking with their same lineup. That means they've retained Zayn Maloney and Lucas de Grassi for next season as well. And then finally, the last piece of Formula E news here today is Felipe Drugovich, the 2022 Formula 2 champion, has lined up a deal to join Andretti's Formula E lineup next season alongside former series champion Jake Dennis. So some good news there for most people in the Formula E paddock there. At least we know where some people are going to land, where some people are going to move to. So definitely be keeping watching because that Formula E season is coming up. It'll be here before you know it. And believe me, when you're going through a series of times where there's just like not a lot of racing going on, you're desperate. You'll take whatever you can get. So if you think, I don't like Formula E, I don't like electric car racing, how can anybody be enjoyed by that? How can anybody enjoy that? Just wait. When you're desperate enough and it's December and January and there's no racing on TV and you're desperate for something, you'll probably find yourself watching a Formula E race, I guarantee it. But meanwhile, let's talk about supercars from down under in Australia. We got a lot of silly season news to cover this week. First of all, Cam Hill is leaving Matt Stone Racing. He's going to join Brad Jones Racing next season for their new for 2026 Toyota program. So he's going to move over to from MSR to BJR and join that Toyota program for next year. So some big news there. And as a result of that move, Bryce Fullwood is set to depart BJR after 4 years driving that number 14 entry. It is unknown at this current time where Bryce is going to land. Hopefully he lands somewhere, but we know at the very least that Cam Hill's moving over from MSR and is going to join that Toyota program for next season. Meanwhile, that's not all. That's not all in the Supercars silly season world. James Golding says he is leaving Prema Air Racing at the end of the season, and reports indicate, at least according to Speed Cafe, that he's expected to replace the retiring James Courtney at the Blanchard Racing Team. So a lot of silly season news going on there in Supercars. Definitely got to watch it. Bathurst coming up here in a couple of weeks. We're definitely going to watch that. So just good to keep in mind, especially as we get closer and closer to the Bathurst 1000, and then later we'll have the Adelaide Grand Final coming up here later on in November. Now let's move on into some NASCAR news because we do have quite a bit to cover today. First piece of news here, obviously, is big. It's lawsuit news. We've been talking all year about lawsuits in NASCAR, and now finally one of them has indeed settled. Legacy Motor Club and Rick Ware Racing have reportedly resolved their charter dispute. And now, while the terms of the deal are still remaining confidential, it is expected that Legacy Motor Club will expand to a 3-car team beginning in 2027, while Rick Ware Racing will continue to field its number 51 entry, at least for the foreseeable future. Now, a lot of this is because Rick Ware Racing leased out the second of its 2 charters to RFK Racing so that they could run Ryan Preece this season in the 60. So that was a deal that had been made long before. But Rick Ware still was planning to sell it. So now, as a result of this is, again, a lot of this is speculated, but because the terms are confidential, a lot of this is speculation. But it seems like right now, Legacy Motor Club, Jimmy Johnson, they really want to have a third team. But it seems like this dispute getting resolved is just far too late in the season for them to set up a third team. They would have had to have gotten this resolved at least several months ago, or at least a couple of months ago, in order for all of this to have gone through, in order for Legacy to start up a third team in time and have it be competitive for the 2026 season. But it's not believed at this current moment that that is going to happen. So what this means then is it's going to be basically status quo for next year. Legacy Motor Club is still expected to run the 2 cars for John Hunter Nemechek and Eric Jones, as well as a part-time entry for Jimmy Johnson. And then Rick Ware Racing is expected to continue fielding the number 51 car for Cody Ware or whoever, if Ware stays in the car or if they find someone to replace him, I don't know. While obviously RFK Racing is expected to continue. They already said they're expecting business as usual for their number 60 car next year, which means Ryan Preece should be fine. It's just that when we get to the 2027 season, things are going to get a little bit muddy, because technically that leased charter that Rick Ware Racing is giving to RFK Racing is the same charter that they're expected to sell to Legacy Motor Club. So once that 2-year deal ends, because it's a 2-year lease, according to the documents that reporters have acquired, it's about a 2-year lease for that, but for the RFK Racing to have that Rick Ware Racing charter. And so once that 2-year lease runs up, that is going to get sold to Legacy Motor Club, become their third team, and then whatever happens from that point, I'm sure RFK will have to negotiate some sort of temporary leasing deal, or maybe find a way to purchase a charter of their own, depending on what happens with this 2311 and FRM versus NASCAR lawsuit. That could be a lot of fluid things going on, especially since there was really no major updates, at least at the time of this recording. I'm sure by the time it's out, we may or may not have some sort of update within that lawsuit. But as of right now, we know that the Legacy Motor Club and Rick Ware Racing lawsuit, we can table that. We could put that to bed. That's been resolved. We don't know exactly all of the details, but we have an idea of what's probably going to happen. So that's at the very least done and done. Now let's move on to the next piece of NASCAR news today. Trackhouse Racing says Randall Burnett will serve as Connor Zilich's crew chief as he begins his rookie campaign in the NASCAR Cup Series beginning in 2026. Now, Randall Burnett has been serving as a crew chief at Richard Childress Racing for the number 8 car for the last 3 seasons, starting in 2022 with Tyler Reddick, and then continuing on the past 2 years with Kyle Busch. He is now moving to Trackhouse Racing to pair with Connor Zilisch. As for who will be Kyle Busch's crew chief next year, I believe that is still TBD. We will find out probably within the next, I would assume, couple months. But as of right now, Burnett's going to finish out his time with Kyle Busch and Richard Childress Racing, and then he's going to go move on to be the new crew chief with Connor Zilisch's team, which is expected to probably just be Daniel Suarez's team, but who knows? We could see some reorganization there within the Trackhouse. Final piece of NASCAR news here before we take our second and final break of the show. Junior Motorsports says Rodney Childers is going to crew chief the team's number 1 Chevrolet in the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series beginning next season. And it will field two drivers in that number 1. It's going to be Connor Zilisch and it's going to be Carson Kvapil. Now, it appears, as according to this announcement, that Carson Kvapil is not expected to be full-time in the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series for next year. Now, obviously, we know that Zilisch is moving up to the Cup Series with Trackhouse Racing. As we just talked about, he's going to have Randall Burnett on his pit box. But right now, unfortunately, he's also going to have, fortunately for Zilisch, he's also going to have the experience and knowledge of Rodney Childers. But unfortunately for Carson Kvapil, it looks like he might not even be full-time in the series next year, which is really disappointing. I thought he's had a really solid rookie season. Obviously, it's hard to match. It's hard to maybe look good by comparison when you look at what his own teammate Connor Zilisch is doing week after week after week and winning basically at almost every race under the sun. But still, I feel like Carson Kvapil has put on a very, very good, solid rookie campaign in the Xfinity Series this year. So it's kind of disappointing to hear that he's not expected to run full-time next year. Now, obviously, this could change. This is just an announcement. Maybe Junior Motorsports says, no, we still have a plan for Carson. He's going to run full-time something else. But that, as of right now, that's not been confirmed. We don't know that for sure. We don't even know if that's actually happening. What we know right now is that Junior Motorsports is planning to have Zilisch and Kvapil split the driving duties of the number 1 Chevrolet, and it will be crew chiefed by Rodney Childers. That's all we know right now. That's all we can confirm. But definitely something to watch and see what really happens if Carson Kvapil can manage maybe to put together something so that he can run a full-time season next season in the newly renamed NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. But like I said, as of right now, that still remains to be seen. So that is it for this week's news segments. But like I said, don't go anywhere because we've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to break down from this past weekend's races. We had a lot of drama in Formula One. We had a lot of drama in NASCAR as well, and we got to talk all about that. We also had the IMSA battle on the bricks that we'll talk about as well. So all that's coming up here in our next segment. So don't go anywhere because you are watching The Racing Report. And welcome back to the Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. Thanks so much for sticking with us here through that last break. Let's get you caught up on everything that happened over the weekend. We had a crazy weekend in the Azerbaijan country, the country of Azerbaijan, in the city of Baku. Lots of crazy things going on, obviously. A crazy qualifying session that saw Carlos Sainz start, I believe, second. Who saw that coming? I even said it. I said, what year is it? I mean, when was the last time a Williams, let alone, not only just started second, started near the front row or on the first couple of rows, but then let alone finished on the podium like Sainz did. I mean, Sainz really capitalized. And that should be something that should be really appreciated about Carlos Sainz, is that he's somebody who, you know, maybe you could have written him off and said, oh, he's going to Williams, he's going into one of the not so great teams, lower of the midfield team, but really, him and Albon have been coming back and making a killing so far with that Williams team. And it's kind of cool to see. And it's nice to see, I guess, Sainz get some redemption. I don't want to, trash Lewis Hamilton too much because I recognize that him going to Ferrari, I think we all knew this was going to happen. He was going to struggle. Leclerc struggles. Sainz struggles. I mean, Ferrari is not the Ferrari of old, okay? Especially when you look at their strategies in quotation marks, very, very loosely. I use that term very loosely. They're kind of playing it by ear, it seems like, half the time. So I don't really blame Lewis Hamilton so much. It doesn't feel like he's been given the car or the opportunities to win or finish on podiums like some of the other drivers within the Formula One paddock have. And I felt like Sainz obviously had this great opportunity where he's got great track possession, great qualifying position, and he turned it around and he capitalized. Did he get second? No, but still a podium's a podium, and I think that he should be very proud of that nonetheless. And either way, I think that this is a good move. This is a good step in the right direction for Williams. This is a good step in the right direction for Carlos Sainz. But also, I think it's important to look at Max Verstappen. I know a lot of people are sitting here saying like, oh, man, Verstappen won the last 2 races, and McLaren is doing whatever the heck they're doing. Maybe this is an opportunity for Verstappen to come back and make a second charge at the title. I'm not willing to go that far yet. I think, Laurent Mekies and Verstappen himself, I think, and I want to say that Helmut Marko as well, have all kind of said that the last 2 races really favored Red Bull's car, with them being power circuits. Straight line speed is really where the Red Bull strength is, whereas that's not really where the McLaren strength is so much. So when we're going up to Singapore here. That'll be the next race after a week off. We're going to Singapore. I think that's important to look at, because I don't know that you're going to see the same level of speed out of Verstappen or Tsunoda or even any of the 2 RBs as you might have seen the last 2 Grand Prix. I think that it's going to be a return to form, really, for McLaren coming up here at Singapore. But that's the thing that's key, because I didn't expect Oscar Piastri to bin it in the first lap, let alone bin it during qualifying. Didn't expect either of those things. So I think when you look at that, it's like, well, now there's the great variable that you never know is going to happen in some of these championships. He could put it in the wall, and that's what we saw with Piastri. But I'm not really 100% certain that Piastri is going to do that again. I think it's a one-time mistake. He was starting near the back. The car was repaired. It wasn't probably perfect the way that maybe he would have liked the car to be, and I think that kind of led to some things. And you even saw Lando Norris struggle. Norris couldn't even find a solid... I mean, he finished in the points, but it wasn't like he was a top 5 or even a podium position. They struggled. I don't think you're going to see that at Singapore, and I think you might see Verstappen maybe struggle a little bit more. So I don't want to right away say, oh, Verstappen's got it. He's on a 2-race win streak. He's going to come back and win this title. I don't want to go that far. I think we might be just slightly over-exaggerating, but it is going to be interesting to watch these last several races to see, what does McLaren do? Are they going to make the right decisions? Are they going to do the things that are going to benefit their team? Or are they going to do things that benefit Lando? Or what's going to happen with Lando and Piastri? Could we see another incident like that? I don't know. Very curious to see. I think that Singapore is going to be a race you're going to have to watch, and then just pretty much going to have to watch all the rest of the races this season to really find out what truly happens in this championship. But moving back on into NASCAR, coming into the NASCAR world, we had a lot of things going on down there in the world of the Truck Series. Obviously, we've got Corey Heim winning again. Of course he is. Of course he's won again. I mean, it's Corey Heim, man. Just inevitable. And it's amazing. He doesn't have like a cup ride or Xfinity ride, nothing. Like, as of right now, formally set up for next year. And I think he's tied with Greg Biffle now for the most Truck Series race victories in a single season. And he's still got plenty of races left to go. I mean, he could absolutely. He's got the Roval. He's got Martinsville coming up. I mean, it's entirely possible for him to go out there and break that record. And of course, I imagine he'll be in contention for the championship when we get to Phoenix. But man, got to give him creds on that one. And then let's talk a little bit about in this Cup race. Ryan Blaney getting the win. Definitely looks like those Team Penske cars are going to be the ones to beat at these flat ovals like New Hampshire and like Phoenix. A lot of people say, a lot of people within the paddock saying, hey, take a look at who is really good here at New Hampshire. They might probably be very good at Phoenix too. Those Penske cars were very good, especially Blaney and Logano. Very, very good cars all day long. Blaney, arguably one of the best cars, had arguably the car to beat that entire race weekend. I'll be very curious to see what happens. Now, Blaney obviously locking himself already into the round of 8. That's a good start. He's almost there. He's halfway there. He's halfway to the championship 4. He's just got to survive one more round coming up here in the round of 8, and then he might have a chance to go for a second title. And his teammate Joey Logano might have a chance to go for a 4th. I'm sorry to say that to everybody who might not want to see that, but after how those two performed at New Hampshire and the similarities between New Hampshire and Phoenix, I'm just a little bit. We'll see. But also, let's talk about the big fly-on-the-wall situation. Obviously, Denny Hamlin and the contact with Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs gave very formal, canned answers after the fact. Denny Hamlin, on the other hand, was like, dude, what are you doing? We're racing for a championship. But also, Denny Hamlin spun out his teammate in front of his other teammate, could have almost ruined the race for Christopher Bell, which would have been even worse. Whose side are you going to be on in this case? I know there's a lot of people who probably are hesitant to take the side of Ty Gibbs, but also the same amount of people are probably hesitant to take the side of Denny Hamlin. Neither of them are particularly well liked, I believe, amongst the fans, but still definitely a bit of a crazy instance. And I understand where Denny Hamlin's coming from. I understand the frustration level of Denny Hamlin. He is racing for a championship. It is insanely hard to pass in these cars. These cars just, it was obvious. I think we saw again another instance of this next-gen car just having too much dirty air, just not allowing these drivers to make the passes the way that they have to be. And I kind of see where Denny Hamlin's coming from in that regard, because when you're looking at a situation where, hey, dude, it's hard to pass. It's not easy to pass. If I can't get by you, that's track position and track time. I'm losing to the car ahead, and that makes it harder for me to make up that time, either on pit road or on the racetrack. It's just difficult. And so I see where Hamlin's coming from. But at the same time, Ty Gibbs is racing just as hard as Hamlin is. Ty Gibbs is racing for a race victory. He's racing for points. He's racing for a top 10. He's racing to get as much as he can. He has every right to go and defend the position. I wish that I was a fly on the wall for that team meeting. I really, really do. We might never know what happened out of there, but I really wish I was a fly on the wall, because that would have been a very interesting conversation to see. But, hey, outside of that, we had the IMSA battle on the bricks at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the first time since Sebring, the 12 hours of Sebring in 2023. The Whelen Cadillac number 31 won an overall race in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Series. Really cool news for them, especially Jack Aitken getting that victory. Look at Jack Aitken, man. I mean, years ago, I don't think we would have. I think we were all kind of expecting to see him in Formula One. He did get to Formula One once, the Sakir Grand Prix in 2020, which I think we all remember as being a classic event. If you watched it, it was a classic event. Perez won. Hamilton, remember, had COVID, had to sit out. They promoted George Russell into the Mercedes, and that's when Aitken got called up and got to take Russell's spot in the Williams. It just a very memorable race. I'll never forget where I was when I watched that. But good to see Jack Aitken get there. And then Earl Bamber also being one of the 3 drivers there. And then Frederick Vesti, again, more guys coming from the European Formula ranks coming up and coming over here to the United States and making a name for themselves. So congratulations to all 3 of those guys on their overall victory at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And then I'd be hard-pressed to forget that we also had another race in Indiana over the weekend at Salem Speedway. Butterbean Queen taking home the ARCA race victory down there in Salem. Good news for him. Now let's go ahead and get you caught up on all the races that are coming up this weekend. It's going to be a packed weekend in Kansas Speedway, the NASCAR Cup Xfinity, as well as the ARCA cars are going to be in action this weekend over there in Kansas Speedway. While that's about it. Formula One is going to take a week off before they're going to come back October 5th at Singapore, and then Supercars is still off for another 2 weeks before their Bathurst 1000, which, boy, we're looking forward to here on this show, is coming up here on October 12th. So That is it for this week's episode of the Racing Report. Again, we really appreciate all you guys tuning in this week. It's been a fun show to do. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, if you like this show, go ahead and give me a follow on social media. It's right down there below in the little graphic there. And then also make sure you've got that WTHR Plus app installed on your smart TV so you don't miss a single episode of the Racing Report each and every week. So, for WTHR Plus, my name is Rob Peeters, and this has been another episode of the Racing Report.